Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Late Night Bedtime Reading with Lilla from Purring. Tonight we are continuing our exploration of this awesome little book. It's quite petite, the size of it, but I find that it has a lot of really good content. It's deceptively small. So we just finished the introduction, and now we're starting the chapter of African deities. Lily has something to say as well. She'll be commentating occasionally. Africa is considered the cradle of humanity, and evolutionary science tells us that it is where two-legged, upright-walking, verbal-communicating, group-living mammals originated. But beyond the challenge of daily survival, what moved those early humans? Did they lead a spiritual life? Archaeological evidence tells us they did. So where did the concept of a god originate? As our species evolved to have a curious mind, early humans sought to explain the world around them, while nearly everything happening was out of their control. Lily is blocking my light right now. Okay. By finding reasons for the way things worked or why they occurred, perhaps we could gain some autonomy. Creating a relationship with spiritual guides and gods who connected with a larger power than themselves was an attractive idea and remains so today. Believing in a god or gods who control what is happening in the world helps people feel that there's order in the chaos. It would be convenient to ask a god for help with the challenges we face in life. Is it possible that other species who roam the planet with humans are reflections of such gods? That's an interesting idea. Before the great dispersal of humans by mass migration around the globe some 50,000 years ago, the very concept of spirituality, or the desire to understand the world through stories, would be continually reshaped as the wandering groups encountered native populations with their own unique customs. Their old beliefs were challenged as they came upon previously unknown lands, observed others' rituals surrounding the cycle of life from birth to death, and became fascinated with the inherent gifts displayed by fellow creatures. Animals remained central figures in ever-evolving cultures everywhere. They are our brothers and sisters, that's for sure. Humans are born helpless and require years of assistance before we can feed ourselves, find shelter, and navigate community hierarchies on our own, so we admire the superiority of other species' abilities to survive independently from an early age. Sure, sometimes people hunted their fellow wildlings, and sometimes people were the ones hunted, but that's a somewhat fair exchange in the animal kingdom, isn't it? I think it is until you start using technology to such a degree that, there's no creature that can survive the onslaught. Like, it's not a fair fight anymore, but that is my 10 cents. The interconnectedness of humans with other animals eventually led to some mutually beneficial partnerships, too, such as the domestication of dogs and cats. Well, if one can ever consider a cat truly domesticated. I read something about how they think that cats kind of domesticated themselves, basically because they figured out that humans would feed them and take care of them. So they're like, let's make ourselves cuter so the humans take us in more. It is believed that cats first became members of our families around 10,000 years ago, although admittedly there are few physical remains to prove this. That said, the archaeologist Alain Lebrun discovered a carefully buried cat skeleton on the Isle of Cyprus dating to around 9500 BCE. This is significant. Sorry. Meow meow. Because cats were not indigenous to that little strip of land, so it means that someone brought their kitty there, raised it, and honored it in death. Wow. We have overwhelming evidence of the incorporation of cats into human society around 3,500 years ago by the Egyptians. One excavated feline skeleton shows healed bone fractures, suggesting it was cared for by a human, almost certainly as a household pet. Cats flourished in ancient Egypt because they were offered food and shelter and often exalted to godlike status. Their descendants are the domesticated cats we still adore in all corners of the world. As a matter of fact, the word cat likely comes from North African word quata, further demonstrating how early people's associations with cats continue to impact us today. Upon discovering the tombs of ancient Egyptian rulers, explorers, and plunderers came upon piles of golden treasures. Among the sarcophagi, amulets, and instructions on how to enter the afterlife written in hieroglyphics, they were sometimes skeletal remains of human servants entombed with these higher-ranked people. There were shimmering and bejeweled statues of various gods, including the cat deities, as well as mummified cats, which is where we get the idea that these animals were respected, feared, loved, and quite literally worshipped. At that time, people were mummified to preserve their bodies so that their spirits would be contained rather than lost in the ether of dusty air inside a pyramid or other such tomb. Many mummies of animals valued by Egyptians have been found in these tombs, such as snakes, dogs, bulls, and of course thousands on thousands of cats. The process of mummifying costs both money and time, so only pharaohs, queens, and members of the noble class got this special treatment. We can therefore assume that the animals who were preserved this way were of great importance. Did the people believe that these animals had souls in need of protection too? Were these cats thought to be as holy as the godlike human leaders of their day? From this, we can conclude yes. Wow, what a different society we would be in if people today considered, like, cats and dogs to be the spiritual equivalents of our current administration leadership. Animism was widespread throughout the early advanced civilizations. Ancient Thebes, whose ruins lay in modern-day Luxor, was the capital of Egypt around 2000 BCE. Its holy triad of deities consisted of Amun-Re along with his consort, goddess Mut, the Great Mother, who was a maternal goddess often depicted with a lion's head. Her son Khonsu, who personified the moon, rounded out that threesome. In 334 BCE, Alexander the Great marched forth from Greece through Europe and into India, conquering Egypt along the way. At the time, Thebes stood as a striking testimony to Egyptian civilization, with its colorful temples and ornate palaces, the necropolises of the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens, the pyramids, and the Great Sphinx. It is believed that he was so impressed by the monuments that he let them stand instead of tearing them down, which would have further subjugated the conquered. Lovely human. Anyway, rather than eliminating the Egyptian gods and goddesses as his Greek people settled the area and formed the Ptolemaic dynasty, they incorporated them into their own mythology. For example, Bastet, the most well-known Egyptian cat deity, was melded with the Greek goddess Artemis, who took the form of a sultry feline at times. I did not know that. I associate Artemis with deer, not with felines. Felinism flourished throughout the area, even spreading back to Greece, where the Greek city of Leontopolis became home to several lion god-worshipping cults. I wonder if Leontopolis is still around. And if so, what's going on there with the cats? Maybe some of you out there know the answer to this. A few centuries later, around 30 BCE, the Roman Emperor Octavian, later known as Augustus, famously took control of Egypt when he ousted Mark Antony and Cleopatra in the Battle of Actium. With this conquest, many Egyptian and Greek gods merged with Roman gods. Diana, the Roman goddess of the hunt, was seen as having cat-like qualities, which made her the easy replacement for Bastet and Artemis. Underground worshippers of Bastet remained, and some of them brought her cult back to the area we now recognize as Italy. Traces of Bastet's devotees, such as ancient cat amulets, have been discovered in Rome and Pompeii. Ultimately, the convergence of these powerful cultures and polytheistic religions leads to some repetition of the cat gods in the following pages, whereby a goddess known by one name in one particular group is reminiscent of a goddess in another area. On record, though, Egypt was the first powerful civilization with evidence of cat veneration dating back to 4000 BCE, where felinism was particularly tied to fertility, nobility, and war. Those early cat gods were strongly associated with the sun god of creation, Ra, who was said to take the form of a cat himself when fighting the evil serpent demon Apophis or Apep of the underworld at night before his victorious return at dawn each day. That's quite funny, actually, that cats are associated with fertility, nobility, and war, because I feel like anybody who has spent time with a cat definitely sees that aspect of war pop out every once in a while. Yep. Most of the Egyptian cat gods are shapeshifters. Lily agrees. She's a fighter. You're still blocking my light, though. Can you move? Most of the Egyptian cat gods are shapeshifters or hybrid creatures with a human body and a wild cat head. The famed Sphinx is the opposite, with a lion's body, eagle wings, and watchful eyes in its human head. This melding of cat and person symbolizes how enmeshed the people felt with felines. In the early Egyptian eras, it was also believed that a god could enter the body of any living human or animal. This period saw the rise of cat goddess cults because once believed to be the incarnation of a god, that mortal being could then give oracles, be prayed to, and receive offerings. Upon the death of that human or animal body, the god would leave that flesh casing and enter another. This is an early version of reincarnation that was popularized in later Far Eastern belief systems such as Buddhism. Interesting. I don't think I had personally thought about tracing reincarnation belief systems further back than Buddhism. Everything comes from Egypt. Once relieved of the divine feline energy that had inhabited it, the body was then mummified and entombed in a temple or other sacred place. Carved feline statuettes and cat mummies became extremely popular and were even sold and traded among individuals. Like cat statue Pokemon trading cards. Whether in homes or in communal worship, people knelt before these religious icons to pray for favors or give gratitude to their favorite cat deity. A feline corpse preserved by mummification was such a popular offering that those who did not have the means to obtain one of their own created fake kitty mummies to leave as gifts to the gods. Oh my god. What do you think they, like, wrapped in the middle? Was it just a bundle of fabric, or would they, like, you know, get, like, a raccoon or something? Sorry, Lily. I know, that's morbid talk. Let's not talk about that. Okay. Throughout the early civilizations, cat colonies were beneficial because they kept rodents and venomous vipers at bay. It was even against Egyptian law to harm a cat. Still should be. One tale speaks of a Roman soldier who was murdered by an angry mob when he accidentally killed a kitten. Yeah, serves him right. Cats who were considered holy, sometimes even lions, were bred within the temples. Lion breeding temples. That's interesting. Kindness to cats is a long-honored tradition in Arabic cultures. As recent as the last century, street cats were fed daily in the gardens of the High Court of Cairo. It makes me think of, there was a really good film, I think it was just called Kedi, which means cat in Turkish, that came out, gosh, it would be like maybe 10 years ago at this point. I'm sure you could Google it or IMDb it. But it was really good. It was a documentary just about the street cats in Istanbul, I think. And it was just really chill and heartwarming and adorable, and yeah, it gave a really good sense of how cats are perceived and treated in that part of the world, which was very heartwarming. So the street cat being fed every day in the gardens of the High Court of Cairo, this ritual had been in place since the 1200s, when the Mamluk Sultan Al-Zahir Baybars, a cat lover himself, decreed the space a cat garden. Oh my god, I love that so much. We need designated cat gardens. Don't you think so? Lily thinks so. Over time, the place changed hands, but the monarch's law continued to be carried out. The Persian tale of the great hero Rustam recounts the origin of cats as an act of divine gratitude. While riding his horse one day, he saved a wandering magician from being killed by a band of thieves. That night, the magician asked him what he'd like in return for his good deed. Rustam humbly proclaimed that he already had all he needed, with the warm fire before them and the beautiful night sky above. The magician was not satisfied with that answer, so he encapsulated a handful of smoke from above the flames, brought down the 2 brightest stars, and said the spell of creation over them. From the plumes of smoke emerged the most adorable gray kitten with bright yellow eyes. Aww. This new furry friend greatly pleased Rustam, and he treasured the cat for the rest of its life. It is interesting to note that most leonine deities in the early North African cultures are female, considering that these were male-dominated cultures. Relating a beautiful woman with the most ferocious predator might seem contradictory. Or is it? Why were they not male? I wonder. Quite possibly this association with feminine power and the savage maternal instinct to protect one's offspring or spiritual devotees can be traced back to Ishtar, a goddess in early Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, who held unparalleled power and was often depicted as a lioness. Among the pantheon of Anunnaki gods, she was a fierce warrior and the goddess of sexual pleasure. Before Ishtar, Inanna was the Sumerian goddess of sensuality and battle, and after Ishtar, the Greek goddess Aphrodite took that role. All 3 goddesses have been associated with the planet Venus. Perhaps the elusive and uncontrollable power of love and sexual desire, the elixir of which has led many men to fight, Helen of Troy vibes, only made sense if embodied by a female goddess, particularly one embodying the magnetism and ferocity of a lion. I've been reading this other book about Lilith's signatures in astrological charts, so this is very interesting coming on the tail of that, no pun intended. In other traditional African cultures, animals also had an important place in spiritual practices, royal leadership, health, and cultural identity. They were considered divine messengers, with omens coming directly from the gods, and sometimes the animals were seen as gods themselves. Animal totems and symbols played key roles in forming relationships with individuals within one's clan and with outsiders. The dwindling populations of African animals, including the big cats, who roamed freely across the savannas, jungles, deserts, and forests spanning the continent, has severe impacts on not only our planet's wellness and local ecosystems, but on the native people's own identities even today. Lions were royal members of the Shona communities in Zimbabwe. The majestic cats served as mediums for their ancestors who were considered guardians of the land. Yeah, magical, something I've been really thinking about and sitting with and trying to lean into here in Southwest Michigan is that, magical practices and spiritual religious practices as well have a deep tie to the land where they originated from, right? Like where you have countries where it's very dry and hot and there's more of that air element or fire element, right? The creatures that you get and the entities and the energies that you work with also are more of those elements. And then if you're in a climate that has, for example, like an ocean and it's really lush, or a rainforest and there's all that moisture and earth element, you get completely different pantheons, and that's not a coincidence. And that's why also, like, sometimes it's like you are not getting results, or somebody who's transplanted, right? This is one of the, I think, just challenges to being somebody who moves geographically, someone who has immigrated or emigrated, because although you bring your culture with you, the land underneath your feet changes, right? And the air and the soil and the creatures, all of the brothers and sisters there are different species, and you do have to start to tune into them and try to speak their language to, I think, really start making that magical connection. Not to say you can't also bring in your own homeland influences, but you have to be present, you have to be embodied in the here and now. Otherwise, magic doesn't work. So lions being royal members of the Shonan communities in Zimbabwe, a lion sighting held deep importance because it meant that the ancestors were visiting. It was also reassuring because the spiritual lion guardians were protecting the land and the people on it. Therefore, it was understood that harming a lion would bring suffering to the offender and endanger the rest of their community. Likewise, leopards were and still are revered as royal animals. They are protected today more than ever because their population is severely endangered. Killing one is deeply taboo and brings shame upon the family of anyone who harms it. I mean, it should be that way for all animals. Like, imagine if we felt that way about all the animals that died on the road as roadkill every day, right? How many people just drive by the corpses that are on the side of the road, right? Let's not play with those words. That's exactly what they are. And they don't think twice about it. Yeah, I mean, you can't go too deep down those rabbit holes, otherwise you'll go insane, but something to think about. In the years past, the holiest of healers and highest-ranked leaders could wear a leopard skin in sacred ceremonies. Special permission would be granted on the rare occasion that a leopard could be hunted for that purpose. However, unfortunately, with humans encroaching on wild spaces, all wild cats face extinction by local farmers when the big cats feast on their livestock. Sadly, there are also still some people who visit Africa with the intention to hunt endangered animals, posing a terrible threat to their already at-risk populations. In Western Africa, particularly in Nigeria, Togo, and Benin, the Yoruba people developed a religion that blended myths, legends, proverbs, and songs. Theirs has similarities to Far Eastern philosophies in that they believe in reincarnation, destiny, and a nirvana-like state of enlightenment known as Oludumare, or becoming one with the creator or universal energy. For those practicing Felinism, that could also be called divine feline energy. The concept of Ashe is just such intelligent energy flowing through gods, people, animals, rain, rivers, and land alike. In their creation story, among the first creatures brought to life was a cat, once again demonstrating the importance of felines to the peoples native to the area. In Nigeria, some religious groups believe that humans can morph into cats with the help of magic charms. Indeed, what an amazing power that would be. Naturally, this sort of witchcraft evokes fear in others. So many who still follow this line of magical practice are persecuted. Ironically, people who completely dismiss the idea of supernatural powers are ridiculed and outcast because mysticism is an important element in many old African religions. I do have to say, so this is interesting, I have gotten to know some Nigerian people much better this year. I have, because of my family's caretaking situation, I've sort of developed an interesting social connection to this Nigerian immigrant community in Chicago, and I've gotten to hear a little bit of their worldview and some of these mythologies and stories. And a lot of the people that I have met in this network are very scared of cats. They don't like cats. They actually think they're very bad juju, and I felt really bad because we have so many cats here, and I certainly would never want anyone to feel uncomfortable or creeped out. And I think most people, I mean, allergies, sometimes you get people with really bad allergies, and I totally get that. If something makes you sneeze or makes your throat swell up or makes you have to use an EpiPen, obviously you're gonna not be super enthusiastic about that creature. But barring allergies, usually people are chill with cats. But it's been really interesting to confront that kind of what feels like really deep-seated fear about cats. But I think it's exactly what they're saying, that there is this tie to witchcraft. So that's unfortunate, but also I get it because cats have strong magical energy, like this one standing in front of my lamp. Okay, almost done with the Africa intro here. The Batong people are a modern Bantu tribe from the ancient Sotho-Tswana or Basotho nations who have been living in Central Africa as far back as the 5th century. They then spread to eastern and southern parts of the continent, and many live in South Africa today. The word Tau means lion in the Sotho-Tswana language, and their tribal name Batong translates to the place of the lion or the people of the lion's den. As one might guess, the lion is their sacred symbol. In likeness to their totem, the Batong are considered strong warriors and excellent military strategists to this day. Among the other tribes are the Basia, who identify with the cat, and the Batloka, who consider their symbol the broad term wildcat. So that's it for the introduction about Africa, and then we'll go on next to some individual meow meow deities from this region.